1826, a frozen logbook kept writing when every hand had gone still. They saw the hull before they saw the mastheads. Black wood, bitten grey, hove up by pressure ridges like a relic lifted from under sea. In August of 1826, a Hudson Bay sloop called Grampus threaded pack in Lancaster Sound, sounding through slush with a hand lead and a hymn hummed without daring lyrics. The lookout pointed and forgot the word for ship. The ice had taught even nouns to hesitate. The stranger lay canted 20 degrees, bowsprit snapped clean, shrouds glazed to a mineral sheen. They went across on poles, 3 at a time, boots crunching brash that sang like crockery. No tracks, no smoke, no recent tool marks, only the tidy insults of old weather. Below, the cabin smelled of fat, ink and wood that had learned salt and then unlearned it. On the shelf stood a book sewn in sealskin, the sort clerks carry when winter is a partner. A thong tied it shut with a knot that knew patience. The master, Sinnott, warmed the room with a lamp and breathed into his mitten before daring the knot. Inside, neat ruled pages, headings in a small assured hand. July 3rd, it said on the first open leaf. 76 degrees north, heavy flow, crew in good temper. The next pages walked toward winter with orderly courage. Soundings, ration lines, the day the blubber cask split, the time the compass swung like a drunkard and then remembered duty. Then came February, and the entries changed, tense. "We are enclosed," wrote the diary. "We take down the royals. We lay out anchors in ice." We learned quiet 2 leaves later, a scrawl crossed the margin. "Keep the lantern." The last dated line read, "March 6th, bells afar," and the hand faltered into a shoe-shaped blot. They kept the book because men at sea keep anything that speaks in weather. The hull creaked a descent. Somewhere in the bread room a rat sneezed. The men looked at one another in the way people do who have found a survivor that is not a person. Back aboard Grampus, the sealskin diary learned to be warm. Sinnott set it by the stove, and the letters rose like breath against glass. July 14th, ice slackened. A lead east. August 9th, 3 men hauling the boat. Light from the north like smoke. Margins carried thumb dirt, the kind made by tallow in charts. Then the script reached September and narrowed, the way handwriting does when rations teach wrists to be economical. Sun declining. George H. with the gums. Saw a bear and did not fire. At Michaelmas, a tone entered the lines, a courtesy first, then a command. We reduce. We lay out ice anchors. We lift the boat as one prints a name. A sketch of the brig, small and neat, added ribs not present in the hull outside. Cross bracing drawn as if to instruct wood to resist pressure. Sinnott traced the ribs with a glove and felt a splinter of ice let go with the sound a glass makes when educated. Then a day without date. Silence in the wind. Below, pale words appeared that none aboard had written. Keep watches. Do not sleep in twos. Lantern. Bread to heal. The cook crossed himself in the practical manner of men who misremember prayers. At the back, a fold of paper hid itself flush with the cover. They teased it out with a sliver of bone. Inside, a list of names, 19, each paired with a single number. Perhaps ages, perhaps lots, perhaps rations. Beside one name, a mark like an asterisk. Beside another, a line drawn through and rewritten smaller below. That night, Grampus hove to in young ice. Sinnott heard tapping in the planks below his bunk that matched no reasonable work. When he held the diary half closed to the lamp, letters brightened where shadow fell, answering light with negation. "Who wrote after the ink?" asked the mate. "Cold," said the cook, which was as near to doctrine as they would get. Morning brought a sky hammered thin and a lead that shut like a mouth mid-syllable. Sinnott sent a 4-man party to the derelict to inventory the kindness it might yield. Oil, rope, flour if it had survived the mice, nails, any spice that could persuade salt pork to pretend novelty. The men moved in single file, the ice complaining and whale noises beneath them. Overhead, the aurora, too early by comfort, hung faded green, its curtains caught as if on invisible nails driven into the noon. They found no bodies. What they found were arrangements, a sleeping place made fast in the sail locker with blankets stitched together by a patient, cracking thread, a kettle set on bricks whose scorch had climbed the beam above like ivy, a tally scratched into the bunk front, 4 with the 5th across, then a 6th, faint stroke drifting below the line like a thought that changed its mind. In the 4 peak prints of bare feet pressed into last year's tallow bloom. The marks were small, light, then deeper, as if the owner had grown heavier by days. A tin mug on a hook swung to a rhythm not made by wind. The diary, returned to the derelict out of superstition's tidiness, added new words without pages turning. Heard a bell far off. Lantern took to itself. The mate shut it, and the writing continued a syllable into leather before consenting to stop. On deck, a flag of blackened bunting lay frozen to the rail as if preparing to be a word. By evening, the horizon shortened, as it does when weather decides to address only nearby things. Sinnott ordered a recall. The 4 came back 3. The survivor spoke little and badly. He wore his scarf over his mouth as if keeping something in. In his mitten, they found a scrap torn from the diary's flyleaf. Half a sentence. Not alone upon the ice. On its edge, frost had grown in the direction of the torn fibers, as if following text. Winter closed as if hinged. Grampus froze to the derelict and both learned to be buildings. They shored gangways with oars, built snow walls against the northerly, and made a church of the galley because fire is a kind of hymn. Men halved rations with the politeness of people who intend to live. The diary settled into a new discipline. No dates, only declarations. Boats housed. Lime juice apportioned. George H. buried, not deep. Keep the horn by the door. The horn, when sounded, came back with an answer, not echo, a low companioning note that made the lamp flame bow and steady itself. Frost accepted the cabin like lace, growing ferns on compass glass, writing cursive on the inside of the skylight where breath met pain. Sinnott wiped it with a mitten, and the frost wrote again, the same word. Here. The mate tried to sleep with the book under his coat to bully it into obedience. In the morning, the margin bore prints of coat cloth, as if vellum had dreamed of wool. By midwinter, the aurora learned red. Once the masts hummed, no wind, and the braces answered in a pitch too thin for instruments, a hair sound that nevertheless found men's molars. The cook saw a light moving along the gangway and swung at it with a ladle. The ladle sang like a bell struck underwater. The diary added a breathing to the lamp flame as if punctuation were respiration. A cairn appeared on the floe, a neat cone of ice blocks laid no higher than a knee, topped with a shard of spar. No footsteps led to it. Inside they found a page cut, neat, rectangular, from the diary itself. The missing leaf returned and now bearing words it could not have received while absent. "Bring the boat. Bring the lantern. There is a low sound." The men did not own enough disbelief to spend on that. They sharpened the saws and waited for a day that would permit a job no day desired. The day came bruised blue. They lowered a boat onto the ice and made a sledge of it, dragging toward the cairn because the page had argued so. Wind stalked them without interest, a great indifferent cat. The sound, that low, patient thrum, rose and fell beneath their boots, sometimes ahead as if leading, sometimes behind as if counting. On the horizon, a line of pressure ridges wore sunlight like knives. At the cairn, they found another note. No paper now, only frost, on the inside of the boat's gunwale where no frost had any right to be. Letters grained like hoar on glass. Not by day. Sinnott stood considering grammar while his breath drew halos on the brim of his cap. While they argued, the lantern in the boat lifted its wick without hand and trimmed itself to a smaller, steadier bead. The men took the hint and waited. Night in the high latitudes can be theatrical. This one lifted like a curtain. The aurora made drapery of physics. They hauled in darkness, the lantern making a small republic of light around their knees. A black lead opened, a margin drawn with ink in the vast white page, and along its far side, moving not as ice moves, but as will does, something like a hull glided parallel, silent except for the mechanics of the note. The diary, wrapped in sealskin under Sinnett's coat, warmed his sternum and wrote one word he felt before he saw "follow." They followed until the lead narrowed into a throat. The other hull, if hull it was, shortened without turning, the way a word does when spoken close into another ear. The lantern went low of its own sense and did not go out. On the inner face of Sinnett's mitten, the hair froze in the shapes of letters and became unreadable when brought to heat. The men argued in whispers that made no sound and decided to go back before decision was taken from them. Thaw does not arrive. It relaxes its jaw. In late June, a river began to run under the floe, and the derelict murmured in her sleep. They rigged a jury for topmast from the spar atop the cairn and found it lighter than a spar should be, as if weight had mislaid her. The diary resumed dates, shyly. June 23rd, ice decaying. A bear on the ridge looked and went as if called. June 28th, tried the pump, drew a smell like pennies. June 30th, heard oars where no water lay. On the 1st of July, the floe sighed, split, considered, and agreed to part. Grampus rocked, disbelieving, and the stranger settled to something like level. Men cheered because men will always cheer a thing that feels like home coming back from refusal. They kedged the derelict into a narrow canal between two floes. The diary wrote fast enough to steer by the low sound. The sound went forward like a lead dog. 3 miles along, the canal opened to a field of rotten ice, and beyond that to free water choked only by dignity. A wind took up labor from an honest quarter. Sinnett rigged a scrap of canvas on the derelict and felt her answer like an old horse. No hands on her helm, yet she kept a lane that threaded hazards with the memory of pilotage. On the cabin shelf, the diary's last written line bloomed and dried. "Leave us our names." They let her go. Grampus fell off to the south with enough stores to promise August. The stranger moved north where the chart drew only weather. A final entry appeared as their wakes separated, letters writing themselves into salt on Grampus's rail and then evaporating. "We are not weather." The cook refused to sleep below that night and sat with his back to the galley stove, counting the breaths between wave and wave until his numbers forgave him. Now the diary sits in a case in a museum 2 winters from anywhere. Sealskin has forgotten grease in favor of dust. The thong has learned to be a label string. A card names it cautiously. Journal, Arctic Voyage, circa 1826, recovered under uncertain circumstances. Children lean their noses to the glass until the guard clears a cloud with her sleeve. On cold days, a word ghosts up the inside pane, here, and migrates away from approaching breath like a shy animal. Once each January, the margin prints a map in pale, dots for cairn, a dash for lead, a curl for the place where the sound tightened. The map fades by noon and leaves behind a stickiness on the glass, like dried brine. At night, the security camera records nothing in the room except a slow change in light on the diary's page, as if a shade had passed, or a lamp had been considered and rejected. Sinnett's copy of the names, he took the folded sheet, lies in the same drawer, brittle and private. Scholars count the 19 and fail to marry them to any list. The 3 letters left on the name board, AR, agree with no register conserved. Inuit hunters who saw Grampus and the stranger in that season told their own story to their children. A ship that did not sink because it had learned how to be ice. Another that followed a sound to where the sea keeps no calendar. Those children are old or gone. The sound remains punctual. Stand before the case in winter. Hear nothing than the faintest letterless hum in the ventilation that stops if you try to keep it. No voices, only glass practicing frost. Paper accepting a breath it does not need, and the small, timely twitch of a wick in a lamp that is no longer there. The diary keeps its place. The ice continues to write in those who read it.